All right, guys, so for this project, what we're going to be doing is a design competition. So I showed you guys some of the examples that I had in the classroom with the vinyl. We're going to be doing the same thing on the door like we talked about. So we're going to be creating this digitally, and then you guys can turn these in to me and we will put it to a vote to figure out what the art room door design is going to look like. So I'm in Sketches School. I created a new drawing, and the first thing that you want to do is go ahead and grab the photo of the door that I shared with you guys, right? So I just went to the three dots up at the top. I'm going to go to Photo, all my photos, and go ahead and grab that picture. Now it should automatically take up the majority of the space of the screen, so just double check that, and once it's good to go, we're going to click the check mark down here at the bottom. So if you've never used Sketches School before, there's a ton of tools on the left. Down here on the right is where you could change your color, and I'm going to walk you through how to get set up so that we can start creating an actual design for the door. So the first thing is we're going to be using the pen tool, which is the second one down. It should be on black down here, and for getting started, we're going to have it on the smallest setting, okay? So we're going to be using that, and then we're also going to be using the ruler tool right here, which is pretty nice. So I'm going to click on the ruler, and that's going to put this shape out here, and you can see that there's the degrees, and what this is going to allow us to do is to make a completely straight line across. So what I did is I placed it right at the top of the door, not the door jamb, but the door itself, like the wooden part of the door. And then again, I'm using the pen tool. I'm going to get that selected, and the ruler is going to actually allow us to make a perfectly straight line as we draw across, right? So I'm going to do that at the top, and then I'm going to turn with two fingers, so I have 90 degrees, and straight down from the top line that we just made, we're going to make a line. Now I know it's not perfectly in line with the door. That's because the photograph kind of what they call keystones the image. So we're going to do it a little bit differently and just have it come straight down from that top width down to the bottom. And then I'm just going to slide this over and do the same thing, making sure it's at 90 degrees. And again, straight down from the top. Okay. And then to get the bottom, I'm just going to flip it to 180, pull it down here, and a line straight across. Okay. And now we're done with that ruler tool. For the outside edge at least. So one thing that's nice with Sketches School is in the upper right corner there's this eyeball. You could get rid of that while you're working and double check things like making sure that we have this completely closed in for some of the next steps that we're going to do. Okay? So you could click that and see kind of what it's looking like as we're going through. So make sure that all your corners are completely touching so that as we move further with the design, it's going to actually work with these other tools. All right, now we also have this window in the door, so that's the next thing that we want to do is grab the ruler again and go ahead and outline that. So again, I'm using the pen tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick outline of not only the outer edge, but I'm also going to do the inner edge. And then we're going to do the sides. Again, make sure that's 90 degrees. And it should line up pretty good on this one. Now, I'm using a stylus for this. You guys might have a stylus at home. It does make it a little bit easier, but it's not something that you have to use, especially when we're using that ruler. It works really well to make sure we have those straight lines. All right, so once we have that, now the last thing that we got to put in is the door handle, and I'm just going to trace that. Doesn't really matter how neat and pretty it is. It's just to make sure that that area in your design is not going to get completely filled in with something, okay? So now once we have that ready to go, again, if we click that little eyeball on the top, that'll kind of show us what it's looking like, right? Once we have that good to go, we could actually delete that photo out. We're not really going to need it anymore. And now we're ready to start actually creating your design. Okay, so I just want to show you some really basic things that we have on here that we could use. All the tools that are on here in terms of like utensils are pretty straightforward. There's like a spray paint, different brushes, markers, pencil. All of those just have slightly different effects. So you guys can play around and see which of those you like the best. And then once we start getting into some different tools, we have lettering, so that you could actually select this and you could type into this to create your text, whatever that is. And then you could enlarge it, move it around. And then once you actually create writing, one thing that's kind of nice is that you can also, once we click that, we could also go back in with another tool and add in extra detail if you wanted to, okay? So that's one nice thing with the lettering to make it a little bit more unique. All right. Now I am going to show you guys another technique with lettering eventually, but we'll get there a little bit later. Now inside of those letters, you could also create all these different shapes and change the angles, change the size, change the color by clicking down here. And you can enlarge those to take up different parts of the door, which is nice. Okay. Oops. And then a real time saver is the paintbrush tool. So say you were drawing shapes by hand and then wanted to fill them in, as long as there's no little gaps where you created your lines, if you go ahead and tap, it'll fill in that entire area with whatever color you want it, right? So that's a nice one. And then another tool that you could use to cut shapes out is the X-Acto knife, and then you could actually cut and move those shapes around, okay? Obviously, we could also erase. And then another thing that is kind of cool is this blending stump tool. So say you had a few different colors that you wanted to eventually blend into one another. You could use this blending stump and you could gradually work on different fades that you wanted to. Now for us, for this one, you can't really do fades, but just in the future, if we use this for any other projects, that fade tool is kind of cool. All right, so start playing around with some designs. Eventually, I'm going to show you guys how to do some lettering, but for right now, we're just going to get some line work, shapes, colors, things like that. All right, have fun, and I'll see you in a little bit.